February 3rd, 1946. Camp Livingston, Louisiana. Naomi Tanaka stood in the bed of an army truck as it pulled away from the only place in America she had ever known. Her hand gripped the wooden rail. 26 other Japanese women sat around her silent, clutching their few belongings. The engine rumbled. Dust rose in golden clouds behind them. The camp grew smaller, white barracks shrinking, guard towers becoming matchsticks against the sky. The American flag still visible, snapping in the February wind like something alive that refused to let them forget. At the gate, Private James Cooper stood alone, 20 years old, freckled face, Iowa farm boy who had taught her English over 6 months, who had shown her photographs of his dead brother, who had shared grief across the canyon of language and war. He was not moving, just standing there watching. One hand raised partway, wave or salute or something else entirely she could not tell. Something inside Naomi broke. The words came without thought, without planning. They burst from her chest like birds escaping a cage that had been closed too long. Please don't leave, her voice carried across the compound. Loud, clear, desperate. In English, not Japanese. 3 words she had practiced in the office where they worked together. 3 words that now meant everything. Cooper froze. His face transformed. Confusion first because they were leaving, not him. Then understanding dawning like sunrise. Then tears, actual tears running down his freckled cheeks. The other women turned to stare. Some shocked, some confused, some understanding immediately what those 3 words meant. Not don't go, not don't leave this place, but something deeper. Something about memory and witness. About making sure kindness was not forgotten in the vast, terrible silence that follows war. The truck turned a corner. Pine trees swallowed the view. Cooper disappeared. But Naomi remained standing, staring back at nothing, those 3 words still hanging in the air, like ghosts that refused to rest. Fumiko Sato asked gently, "What did you say to him?" Naomi sat down slowly. Her legs felt weak, her chest hollow. Tears streamed down her face. "I asked him not to forget, not to let what happened here disappear, not to let kindness be lost." Understanding rippled through the truck. Women who had spent 6 months in enemy captivity, who had expected torture and found dignity, who had been fed when they expected starvation, who had been treated as humans when they expected to be treated as animals. They were all witnesses now, all carriers of an impossible truth. That even in war, even between enemies, humanity could survive. If people chose it, if people remembered it, if people refused to let it go. But to understand what those 3 words meant, to grasp why a young Japanese woman would shout them to an American guard, we must go back 6 months. To the beginning. To the moment when 127 women sailed toward America expecting death and found something far more dangerous. They found mercy, and mercy changed everything. August 1945, the Pacific Ocean. The cargo hold smelled like rust and fear and the sourness of bodies confined too long. 17 days at sea, 17 days crammed into metal walls that sweated condensation. 17 days breathing air thick with salt and diesel fuel and human terror. 127 Japanese women prisoners, radio operators, nurses, translators, clerical workers, a few who had operated searchlight batteries for anti-aircraft defense, young women most between 20 and 30 who had served the Imperial Japanese Army and now sailed toward the enemy homeland. Naomi Tanaka sat with her back against the cold hull, 23 years old, from Tokyo. Radio operator before capture. Her father had died in 1940. Her mother lived alone in Tokyo. Her brother Hiroshi, 19, was missing somewhere in the Philippines. The family photograph clutched against her chest showed all of them 3 years ago. Mother, father still alive then, brother still home, all smiling as if the future held only ordinary things, weddings and grandchildren and quiet Sunday afternoons. That photograph was 3 years old. The people in it might all be dead. Tokyo had burned. The firebombing raids had consumed entire neighborhoods. Tens of thousands killed in single nights. No letters had reached Naomi in 6 months. Inside the hem of her uniform, sewn with careful stitches during her last night in Okinawa, a small capsule waited. Cyanide, standard issue for women who might face capture. Better death than degradation. Better death than torture. Better death than whatever horrors American soldiers would inflict. The capsule felt heavier than its actual weight. It represented choice, control. The final escape when all other options closed. Naomi had been prepared to use it. The training officer had been clear. Americans were brutal savages. Their treatment of Japanese prisoners, especially women, would be unspeakable. Around her in the darkness, other women shared similar preparations. Some prayed softly. Others whispered farewells to families they would never see again. A few simply sat in silence, trying to find courage for whatever came next. Fumiko Sato shifted position nearby, 28 years old, nurse who had worked field hospitals, who had watched boys bleed out in mud while shells screamed overhead. Fumiko had survived all that, but her eyes held something harder than survival. They held knowledge that comes from seeing too much death too young. If they try to make us serve them, Naomi whispered, we must die first. That is honor. Fumiko nodded, her face hollow with exhaustion. Yes, die first. But even as they said, the words, both women wondered if they truly had the courage. Swallowing a pill in battle was one thing, a quick decision made in panic. But to choose death slowly, deliberately, in cold blood, that required a different kind of strength. The propaganda had been thorough. Newspapers filled with accounts of American atrocities. Training sessions describing in vivid detail what Japanese prisoners could expect. Stories of torture, violation, humiliation. Death would be mercy. Why wouldn't she believe it? Everyone she trusted had told her the same thing. Her commanders, her teachers, her government. America was evil. Americans were monsters. To fall into their hands was fate worse than death. Each wave that rocked the ship sounded like a drum beating fate toward them. Each creak of metal a reminder that they sailed closer. Closer to the enemy. Closer to the unknown. Closer to whatever truth lay behind the propaganda wall. Someone began singing. An old lullaby from Kyoto. A song about cherry blossoms and spring rain and the simple sweetness of home. The voice was thin, wavering, a young woman trying to comfort herself with memories of a world that might not exist anymore. An officer silenced her with a sharp word. But the silence that followed was heavier than the song. Because silence meant thinking, and thinking meant fear. And fear in that confined space had nowhere to go, except to build and build, pressing against their chests like the humidity. Naomi pulled out her small diary. She had been keeping it since Okinawa. Writing helped, made the fear feel smaller, more manageable, something she could contain within words on paper. By dim light filtering through gaps in the hull, she wrote, "The ocean is vast, so is my fear. Tomorrow we reach America. Tomorrow we learn what monsters look like. I hope I have the courage to face them. I hope death comes quickly if it must come." She did not know yet that death would not come, that something far more dangerous awaited, that monsters would turn out to be men, that the greatest terror would be kindness. On the 14th day, someone shouted from above, "Land, America." The women crowded to the small portholes, pressing faces against glass. Naomi found a gap and looked out. What she saw made her breath catch. Green fields stretched to horizons so distant they seemed to curve with the edge of the world. White houses with intact roofs dotted the landscape. Trees stood tall and whole, bearing no scars of bombing. In the distance, a city rose against blue sky buildings, standing proud and untouched. Not a single column of smoke, not a crater, not a ruin. It was not burning. The propaganda had told them that America was collapsing, that their cities were in flames, that their people starved while Japan's righteous cause triumphed, that victory was inevitable because the enemy was weak and decadent. But here was a coastline untouched by war. Prosperous, whole, peaceful, as if the last 4 years had never happened. Beside Naomi, Reiko Yamada pressed against the glass, her breath fogging the porthole. "It's not burning. They told us it was burning." The first crack appeared in the wall of belief they had built around themselves. Small but unmistakable. If America looked like this, untouched and thriving, what did that say about everything else they had been told? Naomi pulled out her diary, wrote with shaking hands. "The lie begins to crumble before we even step on land. If they lied about this, what else was false? What truth awaits? I am more afraid now than before, because now I do not know what to believe. The ship docked. The women were transferred to trains. Guards stood with rifles but did not point them, did not threaten, just stood there looking tired and young and uncertain. The train pulled away from the coast. Through windows, America unfolded like a story too vast to be lies. Farms stretched to horizons. Cattle grazed in fields larger than entire villages. Towns appeared with shops full of goods and houses with painted shutters, and people going about their lives as if war had never touched them. Cars drove on smooth roads. Children played in yards. Women hung laundry that gleamed white in the sun. How can they have so much? Reiko whispered. No one answered, because the answer was too terrible. Because it meant Japan had been fighting an enemy so far beyond their capacity that the war had been lost before it began. Because it meant every death, every sacrifice had been for nothing. Through the train car, Lieutenant Chio Nakamura moved with stiff dignity. 30 years old, officer's daughter. Her husband had died at Guadalcanal. Her brother was training as a kamikaze pilot. She wore her grief like armor and her ideology like a shield. She stopped beside groups of women speaking quietly but firmly. Do not be deceived by what you see. This is their propaganda. They want you to think they are winning. But Japan is strong. Our spirit cannot be defeated by material things. Remember who you are. But even Chio's voice held less certainty than her words. Even she could not deny the evidence outside the windows. The abundance, the peace, the prosperity. The train rolled through Louisiana for hours. The landscape was enormous. Sky stretching forever, land flat and endless. Nothing like the cramped islands of Japan where every inch of soil was precious. Before you continue this remarkable story, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Tell us in the comments where you are watching from today. Your support helps us share these forgotten stories from the greatest generation. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Late afternoon. The train slowed. Steam billowed across a small station platform like ghosts unsure where to rest. Beyond it, sunlight golden and clean, almost indecently bright after weeks in dim cargo holds. The air smelled faintly of wheat and something else. Something clean. Like soap. Like something forgiven. All right, ladies, we're here. The guard's voice was low, courteous, almost apologetic. Not shouting, not commanding, just informing. The door opened with a gentle hiss. The women looked at one another, hollow-eyed and sharp. Skeletal shadows in faded uniforms. Their hands clutched the few things they still owned. A comb, a photograph, a scrap of cloth embroidered with the character for home. Outside, the air moved softly. It carried the scent of bread baking somewhere. The smell made Naomi's stomach clench with hunger so intense it was almost painful. They were led off the train in single file. American soldiers stood nearby, rifles slung over shoulders. Not pointed, not threatening, just present. Their faces were young. Some even smiled awkward and uncertain. Camp Livingston stretched before them. Low white barracks in neat rows. Clean gravel paths. A wooden sign announcing their destination. Laundry lines where sheets swayed like surrendered flags. A water tower. A flagpole with the American flag snapping in the breeze. It was not the cage they had expected. It looked almost peaceful. Almost safe. And that was somehow more terrifying. Because peace meant confusion. Because safety meant questioning everything. Because kindness from the enemy was a weapon they had no training to defend against. They were led to a processing center. Inside, Americans waited with clipboards and cameras. A woman stood among them. Gray hair, kind eyes, Red Cross insignia on her armband. She spoke no Japanese but communicated through gestures and smiles. She gave each woman a small paper bag. Inside, Naomi found a bar of soap, a towel, and something wrapped in brown paper. She unfolded it carefully. Inside was a chocolate bar. American chocolate. The wrapper was bright, colorful, expensive-looking. Tears sprang to Naomi's eyes unexpectedly. She turned away so others would not see. It was just chocolate, just food. But somehow it felt like more. It felt like a message, though she could not understand what it was trying to say. After processing, the women were led to another building. This one had white tiles and the sound of running water. Steam drifted through an open doorway. The delousing station. Panic rippled through the group immediately. "This is it," someone whispered in Japanese. "This is where they kill us." The gas chambers. The rumor spread like fire. Several women began to cry. Others stood frozen, unable to move, paralyzed by terror so complete it shut down all thought. Naomi felt her hand drift toward the hidden cyanide capsule. At least she could control her own death. At least she could die with dignity. But then Sergeant William Hayes, the man with tired eyes who had been calling their numbers, seemed to understand their fear. He called over a translator, a Japanese-American soldier who spoke both languages fluently. The translator stood before the frightened women and spoke in their native tongue. "You are going to shower, to wash, to get clean. That is all. No one will hurt you." The women exchanged uncertain glances. Could they believe him? Could they trust anything? Fumiko stepped forward. "Always first, always brave. I will go first. If I do not return, you will know the truth." She walked into the tiled room. The others waited, holding their breath. Minutes passed like hours. Time stretched and bent. Then Fumiko emerged, her hair wet, her face flushed from hot water, and she was smiling, actually smiling for the first time since capture. "It is only water, hot water and soap, real soap." One by one, the women entered the shower room. Naomi went with the third group. Inside, she found several shower heads mounted on walls already running with steaming water. American female attendants handed out towels and bars of white soap. The soap smelled like flowers, like lavender gardens from childhood. Before war, before fire, before everything burned. Naomi had not bathed properly in weeks. The ship had offered only buckets of cold seawater. And before that, the final days of war had left no time for such luxuries. She stood under a shower head and let hot water pour over her. It washed away layers of grime and sweat and salt. It washed away the smell of fear and confinement. She scrubbed her hair with soap until it squeaked between her fingers. She scrubbed her skin until it turned pink. And then, despite herself, despite everything she had been taught about maintaining dignity, she began to cry. The water mixed with her tears, carrying them away. And for a moment, she felt almost human again. When she emerged wrapped in a clean towel, she was handed a set of clothes. Cotton pants and shirt, both clean, both in reasonable condition. There were even undergarments. The Americans had thought of everything. In the corner sat a small mirror, cracked but functional. Naomi looked at her reflection and barely recognized herself. Her face was thinner than she remembered, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. But she was clean. For the first time in so long, she was clean. The mess hall was larger than expected. Long tables stretched in neat rows, each with benches. The American guards directed them to sit. The women obeyed silently, still uncertain, still waiting for the moment when kindness revealed itself to be cruelty in disguise. The smell hit them first. Cooking food, real cooking. Not watery rice gruel or dried fish, beef, vegetables, bread, coffee. Real coffee, not the bitter substitute made from roasted grains. Naomi's stomach twisted with hunger so intense it was almost painful. She pressed her hand against her abdomen, trying to quiet the growling. American workers began bringing out trays. On each tray sat a thick slice of bread with butter, a portion of beef stew with visible chunks of meat, and vegetables, an apple, and a cup of coffee. The portions were generous, more than any of them had seen in a single meal in years. The women stared at the food in disbelief. This had to be a trick. This had to be poisoned. Back in Tokyo, even before the final collapse, rations had dwindled to almost nothing. A bowl of rice mixed with sawdust, watered-down miso soup, pickled vegetables that were more salt than vegetable. Sergeant Hayes spoke through the translator. "Eat, it is yours." Still no one moved. What if it was poisoned? What if this was torture, offering food they could not trust? Fumiko picked up her spoon first, took a small bite of stew, chewed slowly, swallowed, then another bite. Within moments, she was eating quickly, almost desperately. The others watched. She did not fall dead. She did not clutch her throat. The food was safe. A dam broke. All at once, 127 women began to eat. Spoons clanged against metal trays. Bread was torn and spread with butter, a luxury most had not tasted in years. The beef was tender, falling apart at the touch of a fork. The vegetables were soft and flavorful. The apple, crisp and sweet, tasted like summer itself. Naomi ate slowly at first, savoring each bite, but soon she too was eating quickly. She could not help herself. Her body demanded the food. When she finished, she looked down at her empty tray with something like shame. She had eaten like an animal. That evening, the women were assigned to barracks, simple wooden structures, clean, dry. Each woman was given a bunk with a thin mattress, a pillow, and 2 blankets. Naomi chose a bottom bunk near the back corner. She liked having a wall behind her, something solid. The top bunk was taken by Sachiko, a quiet girl no more than 19 who had worked as a filing clerk in Okinawa. Sachiko climbed up without a word and curled into a ball facing the wall. That first night's sleep would not come. Naomi lay in her bunk and stared at the ceiling. The mattress was thin but comfortable. Through the screened window, she could hear crickets chirping and the distant sound of a radio playing American music. She took out her family photograph, her parents standing in front of their home, her brother Hiroshi beside them, all 3 smiling. That photograph had been taken 3 years ago, before Hiroshi was conscripted, before the bombing raids intensified, before everything fell apart. Were they still alive? Tokyo had been firebombed repeatedly. Entire neighborhoods had burned. Tens of thousands had died. She had received no letters in 6 months. She touched her mother's face in the photograph, tracing the outline with her finger. I am alive. I do not know if you are, but I am still alive. Around her, other women were having similar quiet moments. Some prayed softly, others wrote in small notebooks. One woman near the front sobbed quietly into her pillow, trying to muffle the sound. Fumiko moved through the barracks like a mother hen, checking on younger women, offering comfort. When she reached Naomi's bunk, she sat down on the edge and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Try to sleep. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. We must be strong. I do not understand any of this. The soap, the food, the clean beds. Why are they being kind to us? Fumiko was quiet for a moment. Perhaps we were lied to about many things, or perhaps Americans are simply different from what we were taught. I do not know, but I know this. We are alive. For now, that is enough. The next morning, a bell rang at 6. The women rose, washed at communal sinks with running water, and dressed in their work clothes. By 6:30, they were expected to line up outside for roll call. Sergeant Hayes conducted the count each morning. He moved down the line with his clipboard marking off numbers. He never raised his voice, never showed impatience. The translator was always present to help. But that morning, a woman emerged from the back of the barracks. She walked with military precision, her back straight, her face set with determination and something harder. Lieutenant Chio Nakamura, 30 years old, officer's daughter, true believer. She had arrived on a separate transport the day before, and now she took it upon herself to impose order on what she saw as chaos. We are Japanese women. We have standards. We have discipline. Line up properly. Show that we have not forgotten who we are. Some women obeyed immediately. Others looked uncertain. Naomi stood where she was, neither obeying nor refusing, just watching, trying to understand what this woman wanted. After breakfast, the women received work assignments. Naomi was assigned to the camp administrative office. Her neat handwriting and attention to detail made her useful for filing and organizing paperwork. Even though she could not read English, she learned to sort documents by color-coded tabs, by date stamps, by the shapes of typed headers. Private James Cooper worked in the same office, the tall young man with freckles who had looked away when their eyes met on that first day. Now they saw each other daily. At first, they did not speak. He sat at his desk, typing reports. She sat at a smaller desk in the corner, sorting and filing. The silence between them was comfortable. After a week, Cooper began trying to communicate. He would point at objects and say the English word: desk, telephone, paper, pencil. Naomi would repeat the words carefully, her accent thick but improving. Sometimes he would smile when she got a word right, and she found herself looking forward to those small moments. The third week brought mail. Letters from Japan filtered through the Red Cross. Not all women received letters. Many families were dead or missing or unable to write. But for those who did receive mail, it was the first news from home in months. When Naomi's name was called, her hands shook as she took the thin envelope. The handwriting was her mother's, though shakier than she remembered. She opened it carefully. read with tears blurring the characters. My dear daughter, we received word that you are alive and being held in America. This brings more joy than you can imagine. We had feared the worst. Tokyo is barely recognizable. Our neighborhood burned in the March raids. We lost the house. Your father and I live now in a shelter with dozens of others. We have a small space, barely enough room to lie down. Food is scarce. We receive rations of rice and seaweed, sometimes dried fish if lucky. Your brother Hiroshi has not returned. We do not know if he is alive. Please be strong. We love you, Mother. Naomi read the letter 3 times, then folded it carefully and placed it in her pocket. Her parents lived in a shelter, barely surviving. Her brother was missing, possibly dead. And she had eaten beef stew for dinner. She had gained 5 pounds since arriving. How did she hold both truths without breaking? That evening, Naomi could not eat dinner. While other women consumed meatloaf and mashed potatoes, she stared at her plate, her stomach turning with guilt. Her parents were living in a shelter. Her brother was missing, and she was eating meatloaf. That evening in the barracks, Chio gathered those who would listen. She stood near her bunk, her voice carrying with authority. Look at what is happening. They give us soap that smells like flowers, food that fills our stomachs, clean beds. And you accept it, gratefully, like dogs being thrown scraps. Have you forgotten who we are? Have you forgotten our duty? She paused, eyes scanning faces. My husband died at Guadalcanal fighting these people. My brother is training today as a kamikaze pilot for the Emperor. And you eat their food and smile. This is exactly what they want. To make us soft, to make us forget, to turn us into traitors. We must resist. We must maintain our honor. Better to die with dignity than live with shame. The words hung in the air. Some women nodded. Chio spoke to their guilt, to the shame of eating while families starved. Others looked uncertain, caught between survival and ideology. Naomi remained silent, torn. Outside the barracks, faint jazz drifted from the American Guard quarters. Glenn Miller. Swing music that sounded like freedom, like a world where people danced instead of marched. Chio's voice cut through the darkness. It sounds like surrender, Fumiko responded quietly. It sounds like music. Naomi said nothing, just listened to the strange rhythms that seemed to come from a different world entirely. A world where war had never happened, or had ended long ago, or had never begun. Tomorrow would bring more work with Cooper, more English words, more small kindnesses that felt like weapons, more evidence that everything she had been taught was a lie. But tonight she lay in her bunk with soap that smelled like lavender and a letter from her mother and the memory of beef stew. Tonight she tried to understand how kindness could be the cruelest weapon, because kindness made you question everything, made you see the enemy as human, made you wonder what you were fighting for. The cyanide capsule remained hidden in her belongings, unused, unnecessary, because the Americans had not tortured her, had not violated her, had not given her any reason to choose death, and that was somehow more terrifying than any torture could have been. September slipped into October. The days at Camp Livingston established a rhythm that felt both comforting and dangerous. Wake at 6, formation at 6:30, breakfast at 7, work until noon, lunch, more work, dinner at 6, evening hours in the barracks, lights out at 9. The routine was simple, military, predictable, and with each passing day it became harder to remember why they were supposed to hate the people who had created it. Each morning Naomi walked to the administrative office where Cooper already waited. He would have coffee ready for her, 2 schwartz and cream. He had noticed her preference after the first week and now prepared it without asking. She would organize his desk when he left it messy filing papers he had forgotten about, straightening stacks that leaned precariously. Small kindnesses accumulating day by day like sediment building into something solid. The English lessons expanded beyond simple words. Cooper brought a worn English-Japanese dictionary one morning. He pushed it across the desk toward her. Learn. Learn English. Good. Why she was a prisoner, temporary. When the time came, she would be sent home to the ruins of Japan. This was not permanent. Learning English made no sense. But she studied anyway. In the evenings after dinner, she sat on her bunk with the dictionary and practiced words. Hello. Goodbye. Please. Thank you. Food. Water. Home. Family. The words felt strange in her mouth, angular, hard, so different from the flowing sounds of Japanese. But gradually she improved. One afternoon in late September, Cooper brought a photograph to the office. It showed him as a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old, standing between his parents in front of a white farmhouse. Everyone was smiling. Iowa, he said. He pointed to the photograph, then to himself. Me. Family. Iowa. He gestured questioningly, as if asking whether she understood. Naomi nodded. She understood the universal language of family photographs. Slowly, she reached into her pocket and took out her own photograph, the one of her parents and brother. She placed it on the desk between them. Cooper studied it carefully. He pointed to Hiroshi. Brother, brother, she repeated, then said the Japanese word, Ototo. Cooper tried to pronounce it. Ototo. His pronunciation was terrible. Naomi almost smiled. Then she remembered that her brother was probably dead. The smile died before it could form. Cooper must have seen something in her face. His expression grew serious. War bad. War bad for everyone. She nodded. On this at least they could agree. After that day, their interactions grew more frequent, more natural. He would bring her coffee in the mornings. She would organize his desk in the afternoons. They communicated mostly through gestures and simple words, but somehow it was enough. One evening in late September, Reiko approached Naomi as she studied the dictionary on her bunk. You are becoming friendly with that guard. It was not quite an accusation, but there was concern in her voice. Naomi looked up. He helps me learn English. That is all. But why? Reiko pressed. Why does he care if you learn? Why does any of this matter? You will be sent home. This is temporary. Why learn enemy language? Naomi had no answer. She closed the dictionary and set it aside. I do not know. Nothing makes sense anymore. That same week, Chio began gathering women in the evenings. Her message was always the same, delivered with the certainty of someone who had never been questioned. We are losing ourselves. Look at you, learning their language, laughing at their jokes, eating their food without shame. You forget who you are. You forget Tokyo burns while you eat eggs. You forget your duty, your honor. My brother trains to die for the emperor. What are you doing? Sitting in comfortable beds, eating bacon, learning English. This is exactly what they want, to make us soft, to make us forget. Some women nodded. The letters from home had been harsh reminders. Cities destroyed, families starving. The contrast between their comfort and Japan's suffering was impossible to ignore. Fumiko spoke up one evening, her voice quiet but firm. What good does refusing comfort do? Does suffering now help anyone? Does it bring back the dead? Chio's face flushed with anger. You sound like them, like the Americans. Soft, weak. You have forgotten what it means to be Japanese. The arguments continued night after night, but they resolved nothing. The women went to bed divided, and the division grew deeper with each passing day. Mid-September brought news that changed everything. Morning mail call. Naomi received a second letter. Different handwriting, not her mother's, from Mrs. Ono, their neighbor. Why would the neighbor write? She opened it with dread pooling in her stomach like cold water. Dear Naomi, I write with heavy heart. Your mother asked me to inform you. Your brother Hiroshi's death confirmed. He died in Philippines, July 1945, 1 month before surrender. His unit overrun. Your mother and father are devastated. Your father has taken ill from grief. They wanted you to know, I'm sorry. Naomi read it once, twice, 3 times. The words would not settle, would not become real. Hiroshi dead, 19 years old, died 1 month before war ended. 1 month. If the war had ended 1 month earlier, he might have lived. She did not cry immediately, just sat numb, the letter trembling in her hands. Cooper noticed from across the office. You okay? He tried Japanese. Daijobu. She shook her head. Not okay. He did not ask more. Just sat with her in silence. Sometimes that was enough. That afternoon, after the office was empty, Cooper pulled out a different photograph. A young man in uniform, maybe 22. He pointed to it. My brother, Thomas. Then he pointed to himself. Older brother? Then he made a gesture like an explosion. Iwo Jima, February, His voice broke slightly. Naomi understood immediately. Both had lost brothers, both killed by the enemy, but here they sat, enemy and enemy, sharing grief, seeing each other as human. How did that work? How could both things be true? Cooper struggled for words in his halting mix of English and Japanese. War kill everyone. Brother yours, brother mine, same. They not want die, we not want kill, but war make us. He paused, searching for more words. I sorry, your brother, my brother, all brothers. Naomi nodded. Tears finally came. For Hiroshi, for Thomas, for all the boys who died, for the impossibility of war, for the strange comfort of an enemy's kindness. That evening she could not eat dinner. While other women consumed pot roast and potatoes, she stared at her plate. Fumiko sat beside her, concerned. You must eat. Starving yourself will not bring him back. I know, but I cannot. Not tonight. She returned to the barracks early. Chio approached, and for once there was no judgment in her face. Only grief. I heard about your brother. I am sorry. For once, no lecture, no ideology, just one woman acknowledging another's loss. My brother is still alive, but I know he will die. He wants to die. For honor, for the emperor, and I cannot stop him. Two women who had been enemies before united in anticipatory grief. Chio left without more words, but something had shifted between them. Late September brought crisis. Morning after Naomi received the news about Hiroshi, Chio refused breakfast. She sat in the barracks while others went to the mess hall. I will not eat enemy food anymore. This is how we maintain dignity. This is my protest. By noon, 8 other women had joined her. By dinner, the number had grown to 12. Sergeant Hayes was concerned. Through the translator, he tried to reason with them. They'll get sick. Winter's coming. Need strength. But he could not force them. Geneva Convention allowed prisoners to refuse food, but he was also responsible for their welfare. Mrs. Helen Bradford, the Red Cross worker, intervened. She spoke to Chio through the translator. You are free to refuse. That is your right. But you are responsible for others you influence. If they become ill, their blood is on your hands. Chio's response was immediate. Better dead with honor than alive with shame. Mrs. Bradford's face was tired. I have heard that before. It is how wars never end. Day 3 of the hunger strike. A young woman, Sachiko, fainted during roll call. The camp doctor examined her. Dehydration, malnutrition. He ordered immediate nutrition. She had no choice. Sachiko ate, crying with shame. I am weak. I have no honor. Fumiko held her hand. You are alive. That is strength, not weakness. That evening, the barracks exploded with argument. Chio was furious. You broke. You surrendered. Naomi stood up, her voice cut through the noise. She was dying. Is that what you want? You want us dead so you can feel honorable? Chio turned on her. I want us to remember who we are. Your brother died. My husband died. For what? So we could eat pot roast and learn English. They died because of war, Naomi shot back. Not because of us. And refusing food does not honor them. It just creates more suffering for no purpose. Other women joined in. Some sided with Chio. We are too comfortable. Some sided with Naomi. We are alive. That matters. Voices rising, accusations flying, the barracks splitting down an invisible line. Hayes appeared at the door, concerned by the noise. The women fell silent. But the damage was done. The camp was divided. The next morning, Chio and her followers attended breakfast. The hunger strike was over, but they sat separately, refused to speak to the others. An invisible wall dividing the mess hall. Hayes called a meeting, all prisoners required to attend. Through the translator, he spoke clearly. You are divided, that is your right. Believe what you want, but you will not harm each other. In America, we believe in individual choice. Eat or don't eat, your choice. But don't stop others from choosing differently. It was not peace, but it was a framework, a way to coexist despite disagreement. Early October brought something unexpected. A notice appeared on the barracks door. Film screening Saturday evening. All prisoners invited. Optional. It's a Wonderful Life, an American film. Most women had never seen American film before. Curious, uncertain. What would it show? Propaganda. Chio refused. I will not watch enemy propaganda, but many women attended, including Naomi, Fumiko, Reiko, even some from Chio's faction. Curiosity stronger than ideology. The mess hall was converted to a cinema. A white sheet hung on the wall, a projector set up, benches arranged for seating. The Nisei translator sat in front ready to provide running commentary. The lights dimmed, the projector whirred to life. Images flickered on the screen. The story was simple. A man named George Bailey wanted to escape his small town, dreamed of adventure, success, leaving. But life kept him there. Family, community, duty. Eventually, he thought his life had no meaning. An angel showed him how wrong he was. His life had touched everyone. The community loved him, needed him. He realized ordinary life had extraordinary value. At the beginning, there was confusion. American small-town life was so different from Japan. But gradually, understanding grew. The themes were universal: family, duty, sacrifice. The fear that your life means nothing. The revelation that it means everything. Near the end, when George realized his life's meaning and the community gathered around him, several women were crying. Naomi was among them, tears streaming down her face in the darkness. Why the story should not resonate, but it did. After the film ended and the lights came up, Cooper approached her. "You liked." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Very beautiful. Thank you." Cooper smiled. America. This America. Real America. She understood what he meant. Not bombs and warships, but small towns, community, people caring for each other. This was what they fought for, preservation of a way of life built on values she was beginning to understand. Walking back to the barracks, Reiko spoke quietly. That film was dangerous. Dangerous how? Because it showed us they are just people, people who value same things we do: family, community, belonging. If they are people, not monsters, then what were we fighting for? What did our brothers die for? Neither had an answer. Just walked in silence under Louisiana stars that looked the same from both sides of the war. That night, Naomi wrote in her diary, "Watched American film today. Man learns ordinary life has meaning. Community saves him." I cried. Why? Because I understood. Americans fight for same things we fight for home, for family, for mattering to someone. They are not demons. They are people who want what everyone wants. This realization is more dangerous than any weapon. Because once you see enemy as human, you cannot unsee it. And then what early November brought disaster. Naomi was practicing English in the barracks one evening. Dictionary open, notebook beside her, practicing sentences. "Thank you for your kindness. I hope we can be friends. War is over, peace is possible." Chio appeared suddenly, snatched the dictionary from Naomi's hands. "What is this?" Practicing their language, writing their words. Before Naomi could react, Chio tore the dictionary in half. Pages scattered across the floor like wounded birds. Other women gasped. "You spend every day with that American guard learning his language, smiling at his jokes. You have become one of them, traitor. Your brother died and you learn English." She threw the torn pages at Naomi's feet. Disgrace, shame, betrayal. Then she stormed away. Naomi knelt gathering pages, hands shaking. Some women helped her. Others looked away, fearing Chio's judgment. Fumiko spoke gently. "She is afraid. When you learn English, it threatens her worldview. If you can be Japanese and learn English, if you can honor your brother and accept kindness, then maybe her rigid code is wrong, and she cannot accept that." That night, Naomi could not sleep. The torn dictionary pages were in her bag. Gift from Cooper destroyed. How could she tell him? Would he think she destroyed it? Would he understand? The next morning in the office, she arrived late, eyes red from crying. Cooper noticed immediately. Dictionary where she tried to explain in broken English. Woman angry, take, destroy. Understanding flashed across his face. Anger first, but not at her, at Chio. Then the anger softened. He disappeared for 10 minutes, returned with a new dictionary. Nicer than the old one, leather-bound, clean pages, must have gotten it from the camp library. Inside the front cover, written in careful English words, "Build bridges. Don't let anyone tell you different. James Cooper." October 1945. Below that in struggling Japanese characters, friendship is stronger than war. Naomi started crying. Cooper looked awkward. No cry. Is okay. Is gift. But she was not crying from sadness. From kindness again. Always kindness. When she expected anger, she got grace. When she expected judgment, she got understanding. How did she reconcile this that afternoon? Chio saw Naomi with the new dictionary. Her face twisted with rage, then something else. Defeat realization. She turned away without a word, but Naomi saw it. Chio's hands were shaking, her certainty crumbling. The evenings grew colder, October turning toward November. The women were given warmer clothing, coats, socks, gloves. Even Chio's faction accepted them after one cold night. Pride had limits when fingers turned blue. One evening, Cooper asked a question that Naomi had been dreading. What will you do when you go home? What will you do? She struggled to answer in English. Find family, if alive. Help them rebuild. She paused. What will you do? Go back to Iowa, help my dad with farm, try to forget war. He looked at her seriously. But I don't think I'll forget you. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning they could not fully express. The language barrier was too great, but the understanding was there. Something important had happened here. Something that transcended war and language and enmity. Outside jazz music drifted from the guard quarters. Swing rhythms that sounded like freedom, like possibility, like a world where enemies could become something else. In the barracks, women prepared for sleep. Some wrote letters they hoped would reach home. Others mended clothes or practiced English. A few gathered around the radio listening to American music they did not understand, but found strangely comforting. Naomi lay on her bunk with the new dictionary. Inside the front cover, Cooper's words. Words build bridges. She traced the letters with her finger. Such a simple idea. Such a revolutionary concept. That language could connect instead of divide. That communication could heal instead of harm. Chio lay on her bunk across the room, silent, staring at the ceiling. The rigid certainty that had defined her was cracking. Piece by piece, the world was not as simple as she had been taught. The enemy was not who she had been told. And the hardest part was not admitting she was wrong. It was figuring out what came next. Because if everything you believed was a lie, what did you build in its place tomorrow would bring more work, more English lessons, more small moments that added up to something larger, more evidence that the world was more complicated than propaganda allowed, more proof that humanity could survive even war if people chose to see it. But tonight, Naomi held a dictionary given by an enemy who had become something else. She held proof that kindness was real, that grace existed, that bridges could be built even across the deepest divides. The cyanide capsule remained in her bag, unused, unnecessary, a relic of a different time, a different her. The woman who had boarded that ship in Okinawa prepared to die was not the same woman who lay in this bunk learning English words. That woman had believed enemies were monsters. This woman knew enemies were just people who had not yet become friends. That woman had believed honor meant death. This woman was learning honor might mean living, carrying witness, making sure kindness was not forgotten. That woman had believed truth was simple. This woman knew truth was complicated and messy and often painful, but still true, still worth seeking, still worth holding even when it hurt. Outside, the Louisiana night pressed against the windows. Stars wheeled overhead, cold and distant and uncaring about human drama. But inside, 127 women tried to understand what it meant to be shown mercy by people they had been taught to hate. And one of them, a 23-year-old radio operator from Tokyo, held a dictionary and dreamed in two languages. Dreamed of a world where words built bridges instead of walls, where kindness was weapon against hate, where memory outlasted war. She did not know yet that in 3 months she would stand in a truck and shout 3 words that would echo for 40 years. She did not know yet that the young man who gave her this dictionary would carry her memory until his death. She did not know yet that kindness was not just changing her, it was changing everything. But she was beginning to suspect. And that suspicion, that tiny seed of hope planted in the soil of impossible circumstances, would grow into something neither of them could imagine. Something that would outlast war and cross oceans, improve that even in humanity's darkest moments, light could break through. If people chose it, if people remembered it, if people refused to let it go. Late November brought a letter that would change everything. Chio stood by the barracks mailbox holding an envelope with shaking hands. The first letter she had received since arriving. From her sister-in-law, her late husband's sister. She opened it standing there, read it silently, and then walked away without a word. Fumiko found her an hour later behind the building, sitting on the ground, staring at nothing, face blank, eyes dry but only because she had moved beyond tears. What happened? Chayo handed her the letter without speaking. Sister, I write with news about your brother Takeshi. You believed he was honored kamikaze pilot training for glorious mission. This was not true. He died 3 weeks ago, but not an honorable dive. His plane malfunctioned during training, crashed into ocean near base. He drowned slowly, calling for help that never came. Before he died, he sent message through radio. He said, I don't want to die. Tell Chio I'm sorry. Tell her I was afraid. There was no glory, only fear. I thought you should know truth. Fumiko read it twice, then looked at Chio, who still stared at nothing. Hours later, Naomi found Chio in the small, unused chapel, a quiet building where prisoners sometimes went to be alone. She sat on a bench staring at the wall. Naomi sat beside her, said nothing at first, finally spoke. I heard about your brother. I am sorry. Chio's voice was hollow. He died a coward, afraid. He died human. That is not cowardice. Chio looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. I destroyed your dictionary, I know. Private Cooper gave you new one. Yes, he is kind, yes. Long silence. Then Chio spoke again, voice breaking. I have been wrong about many things. I destroyed your dictionary because if you are right, if kindness exists, if Americans are not monsters, and what was all the death for? What did my husband die for? My brother Naomi had no easy answer. Perhaps so we could learn, so we could choose differently next time. Chio laughed bitterly. My brother did not want to die. The propaganda said he would die gloriously. He died terrified and alone. Everything I believed about his sacrifice was a lie. We were all lied to about everything. Outside snow began to fall, the first snow of winter. It drifted down slowly, covering the camp in white, making everything look clean, new, as if the past could be buried under enough accumulation. That night, Naomi took out the cyanide capsule she had carried since Okinawa, held it in her palm. This tiny pill that had once represented her final escape, her ultimate control. She had been prepared to die rather than face American cruelty. Now she was preparing to live through returning home to Japanese devastation. She walked to the bathroom, stood over the toilet, held the capsule over the water. Brother dead, parents suffering, Japan in ruins. But she was alive, and she chose to stay alive. She dropped it, watched it dissolve, disappear. Whatever came next, she would face it. As someone who learned enemies can be kind, that propaganda can be lies, that humanity can exist in war. No more escape route, just life in all its complexity. Early January 1946, Sergeant Hayes gathered all prisoners in the mess hall. The translator stood beside him. Women sat on benches, uncertain why they had been called. Ladies, we have received word from the War Department. Arrangements are being made for your repatriation to Japan. You will be going home. The room erupted. Some women cried with relief. Others sat in stunned silence. A few looked genuinely distressed. Transport ship will arrive in approximately 4 weeks. You will be taken to San Francisco, then by ship to Yokohama. Red Cross will assist with reuniting you with families. 4 weeks, 28 days, and then they would return to a country they barely recognize anymore. That afternoon in the office, Naomi could not concentrate on filing. Her hands shook sorting papers. Cooper noticed immediately. You okay, Daijobu? She shook her head. Not okay. He pulled up a chair, sat across from her. Home, you want go home? Naomi struggled to find words in English. Home broken, family hungry, I not hungry, I guilty. Cooper understood. You feel bad because you have food. She nodded, tears forming. Cooper was quiet for a moment, then spoke slowly, choosing words carefully. War makes everyone suffer. Some suffer from bombs, some from hunger, some from surviving when others don't. But you didn't start this war. You don't have to feel guilty for being alive. He pulled out the photograph of his brother Thomas. When he died, I felt guilty. Why him? Why not me? Took long time to understand. Guilt helps no one. Living well that honors them. You go home. You teach. You help rebuild. That honors your brother. Not dying, living. The words settled into her like stones finding the bottom of a deep well. The final weeks passed too quickly. Women prepared for departure. Some wrote letters warning families not to expect the same people who left. Others packed few belongings, including small gifts from guards. Naomi spent every evening in the office with Cooper, practicing English. They had progressed beyond simple words. Could hold basic conversations now. Could express simple thoughts and feelings. One evening, Cooper asked, "What will you do when you go home?" "Find family. If alive, help them rebuild." She paused. "What will you do?" "Go back to Iowa, help my dad with farm, try to forget war." He looked at her seriously. "But I don't think I'll forget you." The words hung heavy, meaning they could not express. Language barrier too great. But understanding was there. Something important had happened here. Something that transcended war and language and enmity. February 3rd, 1946. The last day. The women woke before the bell. Could not sleep. This was it. Really leaving. Really going home. Back to ruins and family and whatever future waited in the ashes. Final breakfast was quiet. The usual chatter absent. Even the guards seemed subdued, aware something significant was ending. The eggs tasted different. Not better or worse. Just different. Knowing it was the last time. After breakfast, women gathered outside the barracks with their luggage. Army trucks waited to take them to the train station. From there, San Francisco, then shipped to Japan. Sergeant Hayes walked down the line, shaking hands with each woman. Some guards followed his example. An unusual sight. American soldiers shaking hands with Japanese prisoners, treating them like departing guests. When Hayes reached Naomi, he spoke in English. The translator conveyed his words. "I hope you find your family well. I hope Japan rebuilds quickly. I hope you have a good life." Naomi bowed deeply. "Thank you. Thank you for kindness." Cooper stood near the trucks, hands in pockets, looking uncomfortable. When Naomi approached, he pulled out a small package wrapped in brown paper. "For you, for Journey." She unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a new English-Japanese dictionary, nicer than the two before. Inside the front cover, written in careful handwriting. "From your friend James Cooper, Iowa, USA. Remember, enemies can become friends. Wars can end. Kindness is stronger than hate." Below that in Japanese with Nisei translators, "Help, please no more war." And tucked inside the pages, a photograph. Cooper in uniform, standing in front of an Iowa farmhouse. On the bind written carefully, "James Cooper, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, December 1945. An address, an invitation to write, to remember, to stay connected." Naomi looked up at him, tears blurring vision. Tried to speak, could not. Just clutched dictionary and photo to her chest. Cooper's voice was gentle. "You good person, you teach, you help, make world better." Simple words, but they hit like hammer. Responsibility, legacy, the burden of witness. Other guards gave gifts too. Mrs. Bradford gave Naomi a Red Cross pin. Sergeant Hayes gave her a small American flag patch, each gift a piece of memory. Each one saying the same thing. "Remember us, remember this. Do not let it be forgotten." The women climbed into trucks. Engines started, the moment arriving too fast. Naomi sat in the second truck near the back. Could see Cooper standing by the gate. Could see other guards, Hayes, Mrs. Bradford, all watching. First truck began moving. Then second, dust rising, engines loud. This was it, really leaving, really going back to ruins and family and unknown. Something broke inside Naomi. She stood up in the truck bed, steadied herself against the side rail. Other women stared at her. What was she doing? Cooper was by the gate getting smaller, watching trucks leave, face sad but stoic. This was just another workday for him, just another group of prisoners repatriated. He would forget soon. Wouldn't he know? She would not let him forget, would not let any of this be forgotten. The words burst out before she could stop them. loud enough to carry across the compound. Please don't leave 3 words, not planned, not rehearsed, just pure emotion in that moment. In English, clear and desperate. Cooper froze, his face transformed. Confusion first. They were leaving, not him. Then understanding flooded his features like sunrise breaking over a dark horizon. Then tears, actual tears running down his freckled face. His hand still raised, but now trembling. The other women turned to Naomi, staring. What did you say? The truck kept moving, but everyone heard the desperation in those 3 words, the plea for something more than geography. Naomi remained standing, watching Cooper grow smaller. He was not moving, just standing there. One hand raised, wave acknowledgement, promise. The truck turned a corner. Camp Livingston disappeared behind pine trees. But she kept staring back, kept hoping he understood. She sat down slowly, crying. Other women silent, watching her. Finally, Fumiko asked gently, "What did 'please don't leave' mean?" "He is not leaving. We are leaving," Naomi tried to explain through tears. Not, "Don't go from place. Don't leave this moment, this kindness. Don't forget. Don't let it disappear. Don't let war make us forget we were human to each other." Understanding rippled through the truck. Reiko spoke quietly. "You asked him to remember, to carry what happened here, to not let it be lost." Naomi nodded. "If he forgets, if we forget, then what was any of this for? Then kindness dies and only war remains." Even Chio in the first truck, when she heard later what Naomi shouted, felt something inside her break open. This was what it meant to choose life. Not just surviving, but carrying witness. Making sure kindness was not forgotten. Making sure humanity persisted. The train ride to San Francisco took days. The ship voyage took 3 weeks, longer than the trip from Japan to America. The Pacific was vast and indifferent to human drama. The women spent the voyage processing what had happened, sharing stories, comparing gifts, planning what they would say to families. How to explain the enemy was kind, that propaganda was lies, that Americans were just people. Approaching Japan, the coast appeared through morning mist, scarred, burned, broken. Nothing like the green American coastline they had seen 6 months before. Tokyo Bay was filled with sunken ships, the shoreline with ruins. The contrast was devastating. This was what war looked like. This was what defeat meant. March 1946, Yokohama dock. The women disembarked into chaos. Ruined city, desperate people, families searching for lost daughters. The dock was crowded with the living and the ghosts of the dead. Naomi saw her mother, thin, aged, but alive. They embraced and both cried. Her father stood beside them, gaunt, silent, ghosts in his eyes. What was it like, her mother asked. Naomi told them everything. Chocolate, soap, hot water, beef stew, haze in his tired eyes, Cooper and his dead brother, dictionary, film, kindness that felt like weapons, truth that contradicted everything. Her mother believed immediately, had seen American occupation, experienced their mercy firsthand. "I am glad you survived. I am glad you learned truth. Now you must teach it." Her father struggled. "They killed thousands, bombed our cities. Hiroshi died fighting them. And you say they were kind." "Both things are true. That is what I learned. Truth is not simple. They bombed us. They also fed me. They killed Hiroshi. They also saved me. How do I hold both? But I must, because both are real." Naomi became a translator, English skills valuable in occupied Japan. She helped American administrators communicate with Japanese citizens, translated documents, interpreted meetings, bridged between former enemies learning to work together. Eventually, she became a teacher, used Cooper's dictionary to teach English, not just language, context, culture, values, taught American literature, history, but most importantly taught the lesson from Camp Livingston. Her classroom philosophy was simple. The enemy is just someone you haven't understood yet. War happens because we forget the other side is human. Peace happens when we remember. Students flocked to her. Some parents objected, called her traitor, American sympathizer. But young people were hungry for truth, for connection, for understanding beyond propaganda. She kept Cooper's photograph in her wallet. Sometimes when work was difficult, when memories of war threatened to overwhelm, she would take it out and look at it. This young American soldier who treated her with kindness. This ordinary man from Iowa who helped her understand enemies were human. 1946 to 1985. No contact, no letters, just memory and photograph, and the hope that he remembered too. Then one day a letter arrived from America, postmarked Dallas, Texas. Naomi was 63 years old, retired from teaching, 2 adult children, 4 grandchildren, a quiet life built from ruins. She opened the envelope with shaking hands. Dear Naomi, I don't know if you remember me. I was guard at Camp Livingston, Louisiana, 1945 to 46. I have been searching for you for years, through military records, translator registries. I found your name, your address. I wanted to write because I never forgot what you said that day. Please don't leave. I understood it then, and I understand it now. You weren't asking me to stay in Louisiana. You were asking me to remember that moment, to carry it with me, to never forget that even in war, humanity can survive. I didn't leave. I carried that moment for 40 years. It changed me, changed how I raised my children, how I thought about the world, how I understood what it means to be human. Thank you for that gift. Your friend James Cooper. Naomi read it 3 times, then sat down and cried. 40 years. He had carried it for 40 years, had not forgotten, had let it change him. She wrote back immediately. They corresponded for the next 8 years, letters every few months, sharing life stories, families, memories, building bridge across decades and oceans. Proof that moment mattered, that kindness lasted, that witness was carried. 1993. Another letter, but not from Cooper, from his children. Father died peacefully, age 68. At funeral, we found photograph of you from 1946, standing in Camp Livingston, framed, sitting on altar among family pictures. He talked about you often, about what you taught him, about seeing humanity in enemies. You were part of his story, part of our story. Thank you. Naomi held the letter and wept, not from sadness, from gratitude, that she had mattered, that those 3 words had echoed for 40 years, that kindness had not been forgotten. 2003. Naomi lay in hospital bed, 81 years old, surrounded by family, daughter, son, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, a life full despite beginning in ashes. Her daughter found among her possessions the English-Japanese dictionary, worn from decades of use, Cooper's photograph, edges soft from handling. Inside the dictionary front cover, written in faded ink, a list of English phrases she had practiced 60 years ago. At the bottom, in different ink added years later, please don't leave, in English and Japanese. 3 words that changed 2 lives. Naomi's last words to her grandchildren, days before death, were clear. The Americans could have treated us terribly. We were their enemies. They had every reason to hate us. But they chose differently. They chose to see us as human beings first. That choice, more than any bomb or battle, showed me America's true strength. It is easy to destroy your enemies. It is much harder to treat them with dignity and kindness. But that harder path is what makes the difference between revenge and justice, between hatred and peace. Remember that. Always. She died peacefully. The dictionary was placed on the altar at her funeral. Beside him read Cooper's photograph from 1946. 60 years later, still carrying each other, still witnessing, still teaching. That kindness is stronger than hate, that humanity survives war, that 3 words can last 40 years, can last lifetimes, can change the world. One witness at a time. For those Japanese women prisoners, captivity became revelation. They entered America expecting cruelty and found decency. They returned home not as traitors, but as witnesses to truth too vast, too human, too painful to forget. Some truths come wrapped in kindness. Those are the most dangerous truths of all, because they make you question everything, but they also make you human again. And perhaps that is what the world needed most. Not victory, not defeat, but remembering how to be human. The soap smelled like spring. The chocolate tasted like hope. The hot water felt like mercy. The dictionary built bridges. The photograph carried memory. And 3 words echoed across 40 years. Please don't leave. Not a plea to stay in a place, but a command to carry a moment. To remember that even in war, even between enemies, humanity could survive. If people chose it, if people remembered it, if people refused to let it go. Cooper carried it until his death. Naomi carried it until hers. And now their children carry it. And their children's children, passing it forward like a torch in darkness. Proof that kindness matters, that mercy changes everything, that witness outlasts war. The hardest battles are not fought with guns. They are fought with words, with understanding, with the courage to see enemies as human, with the strength to choose mercy over revenge. Naomi fought those battles for 60 years, teaching, translating, building bridges, making sure kindness was not forgotten, making sure humanity persisted. And when she died, the dictionary worn from use was placed beside her. Words that had built bridges across oceans and decades. Words that had proven enemies can become friends. Wars can end. Kindness is stronger than hate. Inside the front cover, Cooper's handwriting from 1945. From your friend, remember, enemies can become friends. And below it, Naomi's addition from years later. Please don't leave. 3 words that lasted 40 years. 3 words that will last forever. Because some moments are too important to forget. Some kindness is too powerful to ignore. Some truths too necessary to abandon. And 3 words spoken in desperation by a young woman to a young man across the divide of war and language and enmity proved that humanity could survive anything. If people remembered, if people carried it forward, if people refused to let it go. The soap smelled like spring, and spring always comes after winter. Always, without exception, bringing with it green things, growing things, hope that survives even the coldest night. Naomi carried that hope for 60 years. Cooper carried it until his death. And now we carry it. The memory of a moment when kindness was stronger than hate, when humanity survived war, when 3 words changed everything. Please don't leave. And they didn't. They never did.